I'm going to show you how to create a game in under 30 minutes using portals. The first thing I suggest you do is go and look at my first video. I introduce you to signing up and creating a space in portals, as well as going through all the basic movements and the basic editing tools within portals. So go and check that out because it will really help with this video. We'll start with the templates and we'll go and choose one. We're going to choose a blank template here, and I'm going to name it Lava Rush, as our game is going to be based upon this. Create new space, and then you load in, and here is one of my characters that I have in a blank space. And we'll click this button here and go to space options. This gives you all the space options you're going to need to create your game. Important ones such as task, movement, and camera. We'll start with camera because we want to create a side movement profile. To do that, we need to have a camera that tracks us from the side only. I'm going to name this side view by adding a new camera, and I'm just going to press the back arrow to load that in. And then once we click back in there, we can click on the side view, and here is some details. So we can have fixed point and fixed angle types of cameras. Let's choose fixed point for example, and then we're going to set the current state to side view. Now we have a fixed point view. However, this is not exactly what we want, as it doesn't really follow the character around, as it's only in one fixed point. So let's change this to fixed angle. And you can see that the player's actually disappeared once I've selected that one. It's just because the distance is very zoomed in. So we'll edit the distance and you can see that the character is there now. Next, we can adjust things such as the right side and the left side. We'll keep that central for now, and you can do that by just pressing 0 for a standard setting. Angle X, this is what turns it around. We want to kind of have a right hand side, so we're going to press here and we're going to select 90, and that will have a 90-degree angle, side on view. That's what we want. This angle allows you to look down and up. We don't need that angle, but it might be useful in another type of game, but we'll put that for 0 for now. So this is looking pretty good, but I want it to be a little bit closer. So let's zoom in a little bit. Oh, that's too much. That's about right. What you can do is manually edit these values as well. Also, I want it to be a little bit higher. So if you just change this higher up or lower down, or you can enter a value manually, you can get to the height that you want. Field of view allows you to look at it in a kind of zoomed in motion or have a wider field of view. I think this is probably about right for now. So we'll back out of that and close that down, and we can exit out of what's called the editor mode by pressing that tool again. And look, we can move from side to side and the camera follows us. However, we can still move forward and backwards. That's not what we want for this game. So we need to change a movement profile. So we click on that option again, go to space options and press movement. We can add a new movement profile. We're going to just call this side. This is how we're going to set it from moving just side to side, like a platformer. So we need to click on where it says side. You can see there's lots of options here. We're not going to play with too many of these options in this game, but we're going to enable ledge grab. This allows the player to grab on edges, and we're going to turn player collision off, just in case if we have lots of players, they don't keep bumping into each other. We're also going to turn on what's called platformer movement. This is important for the game we want to create. What we need to do now is just change our current movement profile to side, close this down, and then we can test out our movement. Let's make some edits. Click here again and go to space options. We'll go back to the camera and click on the camera. I just think it's a bit too zoomed in. So let's make that field of view wider. That's about right there. So we'll close this down again, and this looks set now. Again, we'll click this icon and go into edit mode, and you can see there is lots of items available for you to use in portals preloaded. We can't go through all of them, but the one we will select now is spawn point. This allows us to spawn from certain points in the game. We're going to place it in front of us here, and then when we right click on that, we can choose different options. We're going to choose settings, and as you can see, this is now our default spawn point. Great, I'm going to go back into edit mode. I'm now going to make a kind of pathway by using building blocks. This is another option that they have, and as you can see, there's lots of options to choose from for different textures, and you can even add your own. But for simplicity, we're going just to choose this one, and as you can see, it's made a block for us. Now, oh, he's climbed up on there. As you can see, there's lots of options we have. These are different things that we can use to manipulate the block. The best way of doing that is using freeform camera. This allows us to look in any direction not attached to the character. To go into that mode, press B and then you can move around like this. We're going to click on edit and highlight the block, and as you can see, we now have options to manipulate the block. If we highlight it, we can then use these little arrows to make it bigger or smaller, and down at the bottom we can then change to a mode where we can move it in the space, rotate it, and we can use these settings here as well. And also this allows us to grow this tool here. So we've got different options that we can use. So I'm just going to move this down so we can stand on top of this block. And I'm also going to use that end tool here that allows us to grow that by using the different axes. So I'm going to make this a bit wider and longer. If you right click on the block, you can also go to its settings. So the tile size is basically for the texture. I think we're quite happy with having the tile size like this. The transparency and emissions we're not going to use in this game, but you can use these for emissions to make it glow and transparency to make it kind of invisible. Okay, this looks like we can walk on this now, and we have our spawn point set and the camera is locked in place and we're moving from side to side. Great, I've pressed B again to go into the freeform mode. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually duplicate this. So if you right click and press duplicate on the block, it will make another block exactly how you have there. Obviously it looks a bit different because it is at a different position in the space and the axis is slightly different, but we're going to edit this by clicking on it while we're on the movement tool, and we're just going to adjust. So if we use the axes input over here, we can copy one axes, so the Z axis on the position, from one block to another, and this allows us to line up. So that's just an example. We don't really need to use it for this, but what we're going to use is that grow tool along the axes and also the movement tool to make this block much bigger, and we'll also do it for this block as well. And I do suggest you just playing around with those block manipulation tools so you can get comfortable with it. But we're going to use these tools throughout to make them grow. So if we go back on the grab mode, we can just highlight the blocks, and the little arrows that appear, we can also use them to make the items grow like I showed you at the start. So we're going to make it grow a little bit, and now we're going to duplicate a block again and we're going to rotate it, and we know that it's going to be a 0 rotation on the x-axis for this. Again, you'll get used to that if you just play about with it a little bit. And we're going to manipulate the size of that. We'll close the edit tool for now. And what I wanted to do was make it so you can jump up here and grab that ledge. And it looks like it works. So you jump and grab. Perfect. So all you need to do now is make lots of these blocks by duplicating them and editing them and spread them all up and down this big backboard that we've just made. And here we have about 5 minutes work of duplicating blocks, adding different blocks, adding different things from the inventory that Portals provides. And I will note here that if you're doing any slanted platforms, make sure you add a horizontal part so they can grab onto it. So let's actually get some lava in here. So if we click on the tool to open editor again, and we scroll down to this one called elemental, it makes a block exactly how we've been using it, but adds a texture that is more elemental. We're going to choose lava out of the 3 options that we have here. And as you can see, this is a block exactly like the building blocks we have been using, but with a lava texture that moves. It looks very nice. I'm going to speed this up. It's exactly the same process where we're manipulating a block to make it large and wider and covers the area. So now we've got that in place, we're going to just look at some of the settings by right clicking on it, exactly the same, and looking at some of the settings. Here we've got the scale settings. This scales the texture. I'm going to make this a little bit wider so it looks like a really kind of thick lava. You can edit other settings, but we're not going to on here. So as you can see, we now have the lava. And the aim of the game here is to outrun the lava. So this little gap here is where we need to trigger to say we want the lava to come up. And the way we do that is by using trigger cubes to allow the system to know in the game that we're going to trigger an event to make something happen. So we need a trigger here to tell the lava to come up. So we click on the edit tool here, and if you look through the inventory here, we have a trigger cube. Click that. Again, it's exactly like the building cubes. Click it on here, and then what you want to do is manipulate the size. So we're going to make it cover this area, as when you jump up to that first platform, it triggers the event. We haven't set the event yet, but we want it to trigger the event. So I'm just going to manipulate this here to the size that I want, so that when I jump through it, which I'll demonstrate now, I pull myself through that event. So that trigger cube would set off the event. I'll make it a little bit wider so it can't be missed. So by just pulling down here, so that when I jump through, I set off this trigger event. Great. So we need to actually set up the task to make this happen. So we're going to have to use the task system. So I'll close the edit tool, click this tool to get to space options again, and we're going to set up a task. Now, you've got single player and multiplayer tasks. We don't have to worry about multiplayer tasks for this. We're just doing single player. So we want to add a new task here. Click on add a new task, and we're going to name the task. We're going to call it lava. This is what's going to make the lava rise. But we need to tell the system that there is a task ready to do that. Okay, so we'll close that, and we'll click edit tool again to get to this trigger cube. We right click it, and now we go into the interactive studios. This is where we're going to say to the task system, hey, we've jumped through this event, please make something happen. To do this, we add a new trigger, and we want the trigger to set when the user goes through that trigger event. So the range. Click there, and then we want the task, which is lava, to change from a non-active state to its active state. So once we go through that trigger cube, the trigger area is activated, so it goes from non-active to active. So we've told the system to do something, trigger an event, but what's it doing? So this is where we need to tell the lava to do something. So we right click on the lava, go to interactive studios, and then we go to effects. We want the effects to happen to the lava. What we want to do is change the lava settings. Once it's activated, we want it to do something. But we also want it to do something when it's not activated. So when it's not activated, we want it to do nothing. We want it to stay in place, just like a lake of lava. So we scroll down to portals animation, we add a new state, and we need to set it to exactly where it is. And what that will do is play absolutely nothing. It will just do no animation. It's just set where it is. But it's important to have that at a non-active stage. So what we'll do now is enter another effect, but make an active stage. And this time we'll set up a portals animation, but this time it will do something. So what we need to do is add different states. So we add the first state like we did with the first one, and we're going to change this to 0. The way we do this is we set it by pressing this button here which says set using building tools. That allows us to use those building tools that we've been using for the building blocks. And what we're going to do for the second stage is we want it to follow us up as it feels to us in the game that it's moving up. So we can do this by making it grow just like this if we want to. However, because the player will never see the bottom of the lava because they'll die before that, we don't need to do that, so I'll delete that one. What we're actually going to do is just move it to follow upwards, and we do this by setting the building tools, and we're just going to make it go all the way up to the top, and this is just recording the position. Okay, so we're just moving it up to the top position, and we do that by moving it with this green arrow all the way to the top. And we haven't set the position yet, we're just moving it to its placement. And what we want to do is move that right to the very top. But we also want to give the player a chance. So once we've set that, what we need to do is tell the system how long we want it to take. I think 30 seconds is probably a decent amount of time for them to get up to the top. Obviously you can adjust it to make it more difficult. So we'll go back down. As you can see, I'm in that free camera mode again by pressing B, and I'm just going to test that this works, and you can do that by pressing preview. As you can see, it rises up, so it gives that effect that it's rising and chasing you, and that's what we want. Okay, next we want it to do something though once it catches up with you. So we're going to enter a new trigger cube, and we're going to place this directly on top of the lava, just like a little bit above it, like a layer above it. So I'm just going to use those building tools again to stretch it all the way across the lava. And what we want to do is every time a player enters this trigger zone, they die. And we need to make some settings happen here. So once you're happy with that, you just need to make it part of the lava. You do that by attaching it to it. So right click it and you go to these settings and choose attach to item. And you can see it turns pink, and then you select it and now it's parented to that. So it will basically do what the parent does for the animation as well. Great. So what we need to do now is set a trigger specifically for the zone that we've just made for the trigger cube. So we click the trigger, and what we want to do is when the player enters the trigger cube, we want to change the task state. Remember, we set a non-task state, so we want it to change from active to non-active. What this will do is change the lava from chasing you to going back down so the player can play again. Another handy thing that we can do is we can choose basic interaction. And this allows us to do something that's not linked specifically to a task. In this case, we want the player to enter the trigger range, and when they do, they want to die. We do this by teleporting them back to the start. So we go through the options here, and we select the teleport. Just copy and paste the room ID, which is the end bit of the URL from your room ID, and paste it into there. What will happen is when you enter that trigger range, the player will be teleported to the start. There's one more thing we need to do first, and we need to raise this slightly above the level that the player is at, because anything below where the player naturally spawns is below a 0 point. So even if I walked on that trigger zone, then nothing would happen because it's below the line at 0. So the player would just walk on top of like an invisible line. Now we've done that, the player will die when they go into the lava. Let's move on to something else. I've added some of these jumping pads that you can find within the portal's inventory. So I'm just going to delete this here to show you how I did that. So you get a jumping pad or any prop you want from the portal's inventory. And down here we've got a jumping pad, which is like a trigger zone. Very similar to the trigger cubes. I'm just going to manipulate this in the way that I want, and the jumping pad settings is standard as 3. That's high enough for us. You can increase it or decrease it and the jump will be higher. So look, if we do that now, the player can bounce off that and get to the higher levels. It just adds a little extra element into the gameplay. And I'm just going to copy and paste them. Then from that one that we've just created, you can just copy and paste what you have into the other one. So we click the edit tool, we right click it, press duplicate, and again I'm just going to speed this up for time's sake because it's just me moving them around to each platform. And duplicate again, put it into this one. Actually, I don't need this one because I think I can just jump to the last one without a platform. So I'm just going to delete the platform and the jumping pad. And as you can see, I can jump to the last one and to this one. So no more jumping pads needed there, but we do need a big jump pad for the last bit to get you to the end. So I'm going to increase this jump power to 4 and then again manipulate the zone for the jump. Great, that's all set now. Now I refresh the web page every time I do an Interactive Studios set, and as you can see the lava's gone. It's not. It's just been active. We can check that by clicking here, go into space options and go to task debug. You can see it's active, and if I click this button here, it changes it to non-active. And as you can see, the lava's reset. So what we're going to have to do is make a option that tells the system that actually when the player enters, it needs to go to a non-active state. And we can easily do that by clicking on the lava, right clicking, go into the Interactive Studio, set up a new trigger, but this time go down to when player enter, the lava task needs to change to, well, we'll choose any. It can be from any state, but we want it to be in a non-active state when we load in. So we can test this by reloading the page and double checking. And here we go. It works fine. And look, it's actually working now. I'm going to try and run a bit away from it to see how it works. This looks really good so far. So it's really important to have some of these things, and if this is going a bit quick for you, feel free to pause and rewind some of the tasks that I've set up just so you can understand how it works. But look, this looks like it's working perfectly fine now, and we've made it to the top and the lava has chased us all the way up. Again, if there's some bits in here that you're not quite sure of, just click that edit tool and have a look through the different options that I've put in here, such as the jumping pads and that finish line. They're all available in the Portal's inventory. Okay, let's finish this game off with some sound effects. So we right click on the trigger cube that's chasing us with the lava, and we're adding a basic effect here. And what we're going to do is scroll to user enter trigger range like before, but this time we're going to get to play sound once. If you scroll down, you can then upload a file from your computer, and there's certain options that we have to play with down here. So you can find copyright free music online and sound effects also. I use Pixabay myself. So we're going to preload this. This allows the sound to be preloaded when the game starts, and we're going to set the distance to 0. We won't play about with that. And then there's some options to change the volume and also preview the sound, but we'll just change the volume, then preview. And we can also change the pitch effect. That will happen in between takes. That sounds fine, so we'll just minimize that. So every time we go into that trigger area, that sound should play now. We can test that out. Okay, great. So the other thing we want to do is play a sound throughout the game. So I'm just going to click on this block here, which is the block that we're standing on, right click it, go to basic options, and I'm going to do the exact same thing that I've just done, but this time I'm going to play a sound in a loop. So it's the exact same. I will upload a file from my computer and I will click on preload, change the volume, and let's preview this. Yeah, some exciting music to go with this game. Okay, let's give it one test out to check everything's okay. It's got the music playing in the background. Let's run through this. Okay, so the trigger cube works, the lava's now coming up, and the player now needs to escape the lava to try and keep ahead of it, because we know they'll die because of the trigger cube that we put in front of the lava. So we'll climb up here, and it looks like the lava's got a good pace to it, and then we end up here. Perfect. There is a small gate in here. This must be a bug. These do happen, so we're just going to delete this. Okay, so the only other thing that I want to do is a couple of other things. I just want to add some sides to this because it's a bit open at the moment. I want it to make it feel more like you're climbing up the insides of a cave or something. So what I'm going to do is I am going to duplicate one of these blocks, and I'm just going to make some sides now. So you've seen me do this already, so I'll just quickly speed this up. It's just manipulating the blocks to make them wider and then just moving them out. And then I'll duplicate that, move one across and click that in. And as you can see now, we've got some sides. Okay, there's a couple of other things I want to do. One is just to add a little bit of complexity. So let's just die here. Now remember those wooden boards? I'm going to add an animation to them, like I did with the lava, but this time I'm going to right click and choose basic animation, and I'm going to do on collision. So this is going to affect when there's a collision, so when the player goes on it. And we're going to go to a portals animation, and we're going to add different states, just like the lava. And we want it so that the platform flings the player off when they're standing on it. So we'll set the first state like we did with the lava, and we'll set it at the position that it's at. We'll change that to 0, and then we're going to set one more position, and this will dictate how long the player can stand on there, and it's at the same horizontal position for 1 second. Then we're going to set, using this builder's tools again, but this time we're going to switch to the rotation tool, and I'm just going to make sure that the rotation is on the right axis, and I'm going to change it to 90, and I'm going to get it to take, I don't know, 2 seconds to move, and that will move so the player will fall off. Again, we can preview that this has worked, so after a second it will turn so the player falls off. I'm going to add one more animation state to this, and I'm just going to make it move back. So again, I'm going to click on the rotation tool. I'm going to make it go back to where it was. So I know that I can just select here and just enter in the value that I need for it to be horizontal. It will take about half a second to get to that stage, and what we can do is just preview that. Okay, that works how we like. I'm just also going to select optimize for collision detection, and then put that on to different wooden platforms. So that's all set. So the only other thing that you could do is you could add some decoration. So again, if you click on the edit tool and you click on where it says all items, you can scroll or you can, all the way through them, or you can just click on that and choose plants and foliage. Just choose some plants or grass or flowers or vines, and you can add these to your space. It just adds a little extra depth to that. So I'm just going to add some bushes around at this bottom level, just so when the player first loads in, there is some nice foliage and plants around there. So I'm just going to add a few here, as you can kind of see, so it gives it a kind of nice feel. Just going to check that these platforms work. I'm just going to jump on this one. You see it falls off, and then I fall into the lava back to the start. Okay, let's give this one proper run. We did it. So final touches. Go back to your account and find the space that you've just created and click the clog. You can add a space description. You can also add some images for like your load screens. And I've just done some screenshots here. And when you load into your space, and any players do, they'll have a load screen. And how do you share your game? Well, just use the URL at the top. and share that, and the players can go into your game. That's it, a game in 30 minutes without any coding. Anyone can do it.